Okay, so we have a lot to cover. I am going to get started. Again, for those of you just joining us, my name is Felicia Nermson, and I am very happy to be the moderator today for this fantastic program. So I do want to share a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. So today's webinar will be recorded, and a closed caption version will be shared with you following the conclusion of today's session. If you would like to view closed captions, please and are not already seeing them on the screen, please select the live transcript button on your toolbar located at the bottom of the Zoom window and select Show Subtitles. As you can see, we have our ASL interpreters signing throughout the webinar. Thank you for being here, as well as if you have any questions that you would like to submit, please use the Q&A button on your toolbar. Enter your question in the box and click send. We've got a packed conversation, as I said, and can't promise that we'll be able to address every comment or question today, but we will do our best. Then at the end of the webinar, we will launch a simple survey and ask you to take just a couple of moments to complete it. This information is critical and helpful, really helps us shape what our programs will continue to look like. And we really do appreciate those people that do participate. So it is now my honor to welcome Beth Cyril, who will share a few words before we introduce our panelists. So Beth?
Hi, everyone. As Felicia said, I'm Beth Searle. I am the President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Organization on Disability. I have been in this role for a whopping 5 months, and many of you I did meet about a month ago at our live event, but I'm going to take a minute to introduce myself to the many of you that I have not yet met. But first, my pronouns are she and her, and I am a white presenting woman. And I have, I guess I would call it silver and brown hair, styled in a short bob. And today I am wearing a blue wool sweater. It got to be quite fall-like in New York all of a sudden. So it is really an honor to be with all of you today and to just take a minute to talk about the importance of leveraging the world's most important, or well, most largest marginalized community in the workforce. Many of you have asked in my 5 months about why NOD, and if you were at our event a month ago, you heard the whole story. But just to be brief, I do have a long history of mental health challenges dating back to middle school, high school. I have been super fortunate to have great psychiatric care over the years and have gone on to lead a very fulfilling life and had an impactful career and so forth and so on. But it does tie me very closely to this community. In addition, very relevant to today, I have a 25-year-old son who is neurodiverse, who is very severely ADHD, and he is facing many of the challenges that we're talking about today. He is trying to launch. He's out of college and trying to launch, and it is definitely challenging. So I have a lot of firsthand experience with the issues that we're talking about today. And, for all these reasons, when NOD called, there was just no way that I was going to say no to taking on this position. And I am really thrilled to be here. I also want to add, we at NOD, and this has been the case for my career over the last, 20-ish years, very focused on harnessing business as a force for good. And we are very committed at NOD to working with our companies and organizations to demonstrate that the profitable thing and the right thing are the same thing when it comes to recruiting, hiring, promoting, retaining, developing, et cetera, talent from the disability community. This is good for business and good for our society. Before I do turn it back to Felicia to introduce our panelists, I want to take a minute to honor this year's National Disability this year's during National Disability Employment Awareness Month, I want to make sure to congratulate the 59 Disability Employer Seal winners this year. That's the companies and organizations that scored in the top 25% in the NOD employment tracker, which has historically looked at policies, procedures, processes, et cetera, around developing an inclusive workplace. And a quick note, we have this year, after 11 years of the employment tracker, we have we're in the process of taking the tracker really down to the studs and rebuilding it, and it will reemerge in January as the Disability Inclusion Blueprint, very streamlined, shorter, online, much easier to complete, and it will produce a scorecard or a blueprint, which is why it's called a blueprint, on how to help you allocate your resources and move forward on your disability inclusion journey. So I just wanted to take a minute to share that that's going to be forthcoming from NOD, and we hope you'll be on the lookout for it. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn this back to Felicia to get us going on the content of the day. Thanks, Felicia.
Thank you so much,
All
Beth.
yours.
So happy that you were able to join us today. It's fantastic. I do want to just take a moment to go ahead and establish an understanding of who we have in the audience today by polling you with one simple question that you can answer right on your screen. And it is, do you understand what competitive integrated employment is of people with disabilities? So take a moment. I'll give you about 30 seconds and answer yes or no, and then I'll give the results. Okay, Alex, do we have the results from the poll? Okay, so about 23% of us do know what competitive integrated employment is, and 77% of us do not. So very happy to see that everyone answered the question honestly, because today we'll talk a little bit about what that means for people with disabilities and what it means to be competitively integrated employment. So now I am going to bring in our first speakers today. And I am so happy to have Oksana and Melissa here with me. They are both here from Beacon College, and really hoping that we will be able to kind of knock down maybe some myths and talk really about having our panelists challenge your perspective on neurodivergent employees and give you some new knowledge and actionable steps to take back to your workplace. So again, I want to introduce our first two wonderful people from Beacon College. It is a private college in Leesburg, Florida, founded in 1989, and it does serve students with dyslexia, ADHD, or other specific learning disabilities. So please welcome Melissa Bradley, Director of the Juan and Lisa Jones Center for Career Preparation at Beacon College, and Dr. Oksana Hagerty, Dean of the Center for Student Success at Beacon College.
Well, thank you for having us. And I pronounce she and her, and I'm a white presenting woman, and I have short brown hair, and I have black rimmed glasses, and I'm wearing a geo-printed black and white shirt. And today I'm here to talk about neurodiversity, but not only from the psychological perspective or educational perspective, but also from the history or educational trajectory of what students often bring to the workplace. First and foremost, I'm very excited to be here because it was a mighty task. I had to describe or explain what neurodiversity is within 10 minutes. And it took me 10 years really working at Beacon to arrive at the answer. And the answer came from a very unusual, maybe unexpected source. And it's, I'm sure many of you heard about the book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he did say that you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Goals and systems. So when we talk about neurodiversity, unfortunately, we have to admit that students who are neurodiverse, they can set the goals and they have the conceptual thinking and problem-solving ability at the same level as other individuals. What is lacking is the systems to which most of us fall, or which the society expects us to have. Let me give you an example of a dyslexic student. A student with dyslexia has to problem solve, and for that, they need to find some information. Routinely, what would you do? You would read about it. A student with dyslexia has trouble reading because their reading is not fluent enough for them to focus on the problem and not on the process of reading itself. Imagine a student with dysgraphia. We are so used to taking notes, or we are so used to writing out difficult information. Imagine that that system is not functioning well. So that tool is not available. Imagine a student on the spectrum, and it's so routinely okay for us to say, well, I have a problem, I'll go ask somebody. Well, students on the spectrum do not experience social interactions as rewarding, so going and asking somebody is not going to work because it creates a problem in and of itself. And then think about dyscalculia, which is a math. And while we often think about dyscalculia as a math challenge, it's also a challenge with understanding calendars. So when you can try to plan, when you're trying to plan, you're not only thinking about the tasks you have to complete, you also have to think, is Wednesday 2 days away from Tuesday or 1 day away? It's the next day. This is what dyscalculia can do to you. So again, you can rise to the level of your goals because your conceptual problem-solving ability is the same. What is not the same is the systems to which we routinely fall, because we cannot read fluently enough, we cannot write fluently enough, our math is not as powerful, we do not reach out to people for questions because we don't find it easy. And then when you have attention deficit, you do not learn from experiences other people do. And you have to repeat those experiences again and again and again, not because of the intellectual challenge, because every single time the situation is new to you, because you see different aspects, because your attention emphasizes different aspects of the situation. So again, the basic understanding is it's the same problem-solving ability, it's the systems which are not functioning as well as we expect as the society. Just go read. No, it's not working this way. It's not that easy. It's not going to help me. There should be a different approach. That's the psychological approach to neurodiversity, but it is also very important to understand the educational trajectory that our students bring. Because when they function for 12 years under IDEA, and then they move to colleges and it's a different legal framework, it's ADA, and then they leave college, and some places may not have a disability services office like we do at Beacon or probably any school right now. It's very, very different environment to navigate for these individuals. And we are seeing two very different experiences that students bring to Beacon. One experience can be associated with trauma. And you really, very often, you cannot talk about neurodiversity without talking about trauma. Because if a student is expected to participate without supports or without accommodations or without modifications, these experiences will be very negative for the student. And then when they face the same experiences later on in life, what they see is escape and avoidance. A different experience which students also bring is when expectations and tasks and homework is modified, not because it has to be modified to help the student with a disability, but because we anticipate some problem behavior. And so we want to avoid problem behavior. And so, okay, my student has a problem with reading. let's not give them reading list. They have attention deficit and they struggle to complete homework. Let's not give them any homework. This is again creates a situation in which the student is not ready for the expectation of the college or the real world because the experiences, the assignments have been so modified that the student is not ready for real life expectations. Another part of the same educational experience is when the student is pulled out. They really do not expect to participate in class like anybody else because they know that there will be a resource teacher who will come into the room and ask the student to leave just to sit in the resource center and hear the same thing but twice. So when students come to Beacon, we very often have to change that expectation and really teach the student, you need to participate here and now. There will never be another person, another room, another time when somebody will explain that. And the last but not least is the expectation that, or the model of support that is, I'll do it for you. It's very, very dangerous because actually it is using part of the skill development system, which is very helpful because I'll do it for you is the first part of skill development. I will model something for you. But it also always should be followed with, I'll do it with you, I'll watch you do it, and then you'll do it independently. Very often support systems, because it's easier, support systems stop, I'll do it for you because it's easier. For me, not for the student, for the educator. And so students also come with the expectation of, well, I need so much help, I'm almost unable to do anything on my own. Somebody has to do it for me. So at Beacon, when we realized that these are the experiences that the students bring, we built a different system in which we decided to create a system that will work for the students right here, right now in the classroom. And so the job of any support services that we have at Beacon is not to pull the student out, but to bring the student back. And I think this is one of the core ideas for competitive employment for the students, creating the systems that can bring the employee back and not to pull the student out. And don't get me wrong here, accommodations are very important, but if we apply the business model from bad to good to great, accommodations can only take you from bad to good, but there should be some systems that will take you from good to great. And that applies to neurotypical and neurodivergent individuals, except with neurodivergent individuals, we really have to think about two layers, two tiers, from bad to good and that from good to great. Well, I hope I was able to capture and relay 10 years of my experience at Beacon College within this 10 minutes. And thank you so very much for this opportunity. And I'll be happy to continue participating.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Hagerty. I appreciate that. You did such a great job. I'm really, I just am so, oh my goodness, I'm on. Oh no, I am unmuted. Thank you. But I really am so happy to have you here. I want to turn it over to Melissa now, and she will obviously introduce herself and then talk a little bit about that experience as far as the experiential learning is concerned. So thank you.
Indeed. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. I serve as the director of our Juan and Lisa Jones Center for Career Preparation here at Beacon College. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a white woman with short brown curly hair, and I'm currently wearing a black and tan blouse. Behind me is a beige hotel room you can't see, but is camouflaged with our Beacon College logo. And it truly is, Felicia and team, such a unique and honor to be a part of this conversation today, because by serving a 100% neurodiverse student population, Beacon College, like so many others, continues to raise the bar with experiential learning opportunities that can provide every student with those professional experiences are necessary to help shape their abilities and prepare them for worthy work across industries and communities everywhere. We accomplish this through a robust combination of classroom learning, a variety of stackable student experiences, and a toolkit of resources that students can leverage as undergraduates, alumni, and even well into their early career opportunities, which will prepare them for competitive integrated employment in the future. If you'll go ahead, if I could trouble you, Alex, to forward that slide for me. You know, at Beacon College, we really wanted to hone in on focus on more of a gateway approach to really concentrate on what our services can look like and how they can best support the models that Oksana spoke about earlier. Historically, as many of you know, or have experienced yourselves, that career services are typically embraced more towards the junior, senior year for students everywhere. But for today's students, especially this generation of neurodiverse students that we serve and all others are serving, more time is needed to help them recognize their value systems, or even their currency, if you will, so they can better prepare and position themselves for what employers are looking for from a competitive, neurodiverse, and neurotypical talent workforce. And over the last few years, Beacon has truly recognized the need to not just meet our neurodiverse students where they're at, but truly do our best to engage them at an earlier intersection of new learning. Beginning freshman year, we introduced semester-long career development coursework to all our first-year students, and ultimately, our students complete a total of 4 semesters of such before they graduate from Beacon. We leverage that very coursework to establish early relationships between our students and our team of career advisors who are organized by major, so we can connect and support students as they begin to explore career pathways and pursue such even after graduation. This early engagement strategy has resulted in a major shift in student groups who would otherwise not connect with our services, opportunities, or even those resources until graduation was within sight. As you can see by those graphs shown, we've been able to really flip the script on campus-wide level of engagement with our advisors and our services, with our evidence that freshmen, believe it or not, are now our most frequent customers in providing that delivery of information and resources to our students. We're also making a better connection for students who may be entirely new to work experience and even professional growth by also adding the Office of Student Employment to our division. In fact, at Beacon College, 26% of our students currently hold on-campus part-time roles, which helps them develop their recruitment stamina, those hard and soft skills, teamwork, conflict resolution, executive functioning, and even their leadership capabilities. In fact, nearly 1 in 5 of those students currently employed as student workers are actually first-year students at our college. If I could trouble you, Alex, to advance that slide for me. We've also learned that early stackable experiences over time prove more valuable to our neurodiverse students when even selecting their majors, minors, and determining their career pathways. These combination of experiential learning in more bite-sized levels can also empower neurodiverse performers to better develop their executive functioning skills as they learn to evaluate and manage new or multiple settings, new supervisors, colleagues, and even workplace expectations. While our center is explicitly not a job placement center, we are active alongside students as they explore experiential learning, and they want to pursue either in town here in Central Florida or their hometowns across the US or elsewhere across the nation, even outside of the United States altogether. All our 4-year students complete at least 80 hours of experiential learning that relates to their major, their minor, or their career goals. And such experiences may include pre-improved volunteer work, even paid part-time roles, virtual or in-person internships. What was once typically completed towards the conclusion of their degrees has now evolved into an average of 100 plus hours of experience earned over time through multiple opportunities with multiple employers. And this can begin for students as early as summer of their first year with us. As many of us have encountered, sometimes the experience you gain can tell you more about what you don't want to do for a living, as much as it can shape what you're eager to pursue. Our one-to-one experiential learning support model is absolutely achieved through student career advisor consultation and ongoing coaching, as well as supervisor evaluations that are used in those coaching sessions with our students. And this has resulted in exponential growth for our student population. In fact, just this past summer, 2024, nearly 11% of Beacon students completed an average of 148 hours of experiential learning, despite the fact that only 80 hours was the minimum. We're now seeing that growth over time with the more practice they can have with industry experience throughout their college coursework and beyond. We also recognize that neurodiverse students continue to face challenges when interviewing for competitive internships and early employment opportunities for a variety of reasons. We recognize the need to provide better support for our neurodiverse students to help them transition from scripted responses that hiring managers were receiving to focused responses that rely on personal evidence, examples, and experiences, where the student must learn to make authentic connections independently during any interview opportunity. In fact, Beacon now employs both traditional and innovative methods to better prepare our students for in-person and virtual interviews, part-time employment, internships, early careers, graduate school admissions, and even career advancement for alumni. Big Interview is our interview practice training system that leverages unlimited video practice with human feedback and artificial intelligence to better prepare our candidates for these robust real-world opportunities. In fact, Big Interview has helped us unlock very sensitive, important decisions for neurodiverse job seekers, and that is whether or not they should choose to disclose their learning or attention differences or their needs for reasonable workplace accommodations with a potential employer. Despite how prevalent self-advocacy and disclosure is across our campus, our students will often share that regardless of how open that college environment is for them, they are truly terrified that disclosure in any capacity with an employer or an HR professional will ultimately be used against them. While this is definitely a mindset we are working to eliminate, it exists and it is rampant, not only across our campus, but across college campuses and education institutions around the country. Because of this mindset, neurodiverse candidates may tend to retreat from seeking the very reasonable accommodations that can assist them in being viable candidates and productive team members, and can even continue to contribute to high turnover in your workplace environments. Big Interview is helping us as a resource for alumni who are also experiencing underemployment or faced with unexpected job transition for a variety of reasons. And we'll please move forward to our next slide. Wherever possible, Beacon aims to increase employer engagement in new environments with support mechanisms available to our participants and allies. What was once a traditional on-campus career fair was even reimagined this past spring to push student boundaries and develop our neurodiverse participants into intentional opportunity seekers. Beacon now operates ICANN, Internships, Careers, and Neurodiversity. It is the nation's first in-person career fair exclusively dedicated to our neurodiverse career seekers and engages national, regional, and local employers eager to develop a neurodiverse early talent pipeline, and is set to take place again this year on Friday, April the 4th, and we welcome your participation. At ICANN, campus buses transport students off-site to this community location designed to provide support mechanisms that embrace independence through discovery. Our learning specialists serve as success coaches and offer guidance and assistance to students, and we even offer a sensory room to help our students, alumni, and our employer partners with a space to reset and regroup as needed. Our students participate regardless of year and major to help develop those executive functioning and coping skills and empower them to participate in similar opportunities within our Central Florida market and ultimately in their own hometowns as independent career seekers. Furthermore, our faculty at Beacon are actively preparing our students for over 30 industry credentials and professional certifications that add value to their degree programs and help better prepare early talent for lifelong learning expected from a competitive employment market. And finally, Beacon is fortunate to partner with neurodiverse employer candidate networks such as Integrate and several others throughout the nation who are working diligently to identify and connect early talent with employers who are eager to embrace and develop a neurodiverse talent workforce. Connecting with these partner networks has been instrumental in preparing our graduates to activate professional employment pipelines with trusted advocates. And we couldn't do this without really seeing the trajectory of how experiential learning has rapidly evolved at our college, and look forward to connecting with our students and alumni with even more employers and allies of all sizes and industries who are committed to this uniquely talented workforce.
Thank you so much. That was a lot. We've just thrown a lot at everyone in our first approximately 20 minutes. But I do want to thank Melissa and Oksana for your insight and expertise. We are going to bring you back at the end so that we can have a discussion with the whole group on the webinar today and to answer some audience questions. So now I'd like to welcome our next speaker. That is Marcia Scheiner, president and founder of Integrate, which works with companies to hire, manage, and retain autistic talent. And it really is my pleasure to announce our formal partnership with Integrate. Stay tuned for our press release coming out soon, but we have been working with Marcia and her team for several years now, and I really am thrilled to formalize this partnership. So Marcia, I am going to turn it over to you now so that you can talk a little bit about what you do and Integrate and the services that you offer.
Great. Thank you, Felicia, and everyone at NOD for inviting us to join you all here today, and for all of those that have joined us. I am a white presenting woman with sort of shoulder length strawberry blonde hair. I am wearing brown frame glasses, and I am wearing a sort of plum purple turtleneck with a gray jacket over it today. If we could put the first slide up, that would be great. So as Felicia said, we work with companies. That's what we do. We help companies identify, recruit, and retain neurodivergent talent, primarily autistic individuals and those with ADHD. And in the last few years, we have placed over 190 candidates in internships or full-time positions in companies throughout the US and Canada. And we have trained thousands of employees at over 100 companies on neuroinclusion. And I want to make a point here because we had the poll in the beginning and we asked how many people understood what competitive integrated employment is. And what I can tell you is those 190 plus individuals we have placed have been placed in competitive integrated employment. And what that means is they have been placed in jobs that employers were looking to fill with candidates. Those candidates could have been neurotypical or neurodivergent, but they were looking to fill those roles. And they were looking to fill them with candidates who could meet the requirements of the job. And they pay them a competitive wage that they would pay to any candidates that they hire. And that truly is our mission, our vision, our goal. It's what we work for every day, which is to help companies become neuro-inclusive employers. And we do that through education and training, and by helping them launch sustainable and scalable neuro-inclusive hiring programs. So if we could go to the next slide. So the way we help employers become neuro-inclusive is by providing services around assessment, education and training, sourcing, and onboarding support. So for assessment, we will assess an employer's policies and practices around recruiting, interviewing, and onboarding neurodivergent talent. And that can include how job descriptions are written, how an applicant tracking system is used, and how third parties are used for third-party onboarding companies are integrated into the process. We provide education and training on autism and neurodivergence awareness, on creating an inclusive interview process for neurodivergent talent, and successful management strategies for your hiring managers. We also provide mentor training when you set up mentoring programs. We source qualified neurodivergent candidates who are work ready for positions employers need filled, and we work with those employers to put those candidates through an appropriate interview process. And finally, we provide up to 6 months of onboarding support, but it's largely for the hiring managers. As I just said, we tend to place work-ready candidates who what they need is to come into an environment that's going to know how to support them. So we provide that onboarding support to the hiring managers, and we do continue to follow the candidates and support them as well. So really, we get 2 questions when we're talking to employers. And they're the most common questions we get when they're thinking about this issue of neuroinclusion and what they should do in their organization. The first one is, why should we focus on neurodiversity hiring, again, versus other underrepresented groups? And then how do we build a case for that internally? So what I'd like to do is actually answer those 2 questions for you now. So if we can move to the next slide. I'd first like to start with the financial impact of neurodiversity hiring. And I want to highlight just a few of the points on this slide. I'm not going to go through every single one, but studies show that companies that prioritize disability inclusion have better financial performance than their peers. So what company wouldn't want to see 30% higher profit margins, 28% higher revenue, or double their net income? That's sort of an easy question to answer. Everyone knows that absenteeism and turnover costs are significant for employers every year. Companies that practice disability inclusion benefit from reduced turnover and fewer employee sick days due to an improved sense of workplace well-being and employee engagement. So again, reduced expenses. Not on here, but a Nielsen survey shows that 66% of consumers are willing to pay more for products from socially responsible companies. And companies that are known for being inclusive often experience higher brand loyalty. So, but the business case for this does go beyond the financial. So next slide, please. When you think about the recruiting process, and we've heard from the folks at Beacon College, really, the struggle that some candidates can have getting a job and the work that they're doing to help promote better employment outcomes for neurodivergent candidates. But data tells us today that 33% of recruiters admit that they make a decision whether or not to hire a candidate or to move them forward in the interview process within the first 90 seconds of an interview. 65% say they're not going to hire someone that doesn't make eye contact, and 40% feel that a lack of a smile is a reason not to hire a candidate. So we know most employers are missing out on neurodivergent talent as a result of these statistics. And we also know that this is a very substantial talent pool and is only growing in size. So it has a tremendous human capital impact on organizations going forward. The incidence rate for ADHD is 1 in 11, for autism 1 in 36, and for dyslexia 1 in 5. Overall, it's estimated that 15 to 20% of the global population is neurodivergent. And to me, one of the most stunning statistics is that recently came out is that 53% of Gen Z identify as neurodivergent. So if employers want to meet their future hiring needs, understanding how to engage individuals who think and process information differently it won't be optional. It's going to be required. So I want to close by pointing out that while we are talking about neuroinclusion today, the employers who have implemented sizable neurodiversity hiring programs will tell you that the participating managers become more effective communicators and better managers of all their employees. So the benefits of this style of management are really universal. And what we talk about when we talk about neuroinclusion really is mostly universal design. And with that, I will turn it back to Felicia.
Thank you so much, Marcia. I do want to welcome Melissa and Oksana back for some group discussion. I will start out by saying that I, as an adult who was diagnosed with ADHD, it's good for everyone. You have more people in the workplace that are neurodiverse, as Marcia is saying, and Oksana and Melissa, and this understanding it, and to Marcia's point, understanding really how to manage people is good for everyone. So I just really want to reinforce that. And it really is an incredible program that Beacon has. And the reason why we asked about competitive integrated employment is because Beacon is getting students ready for competitive integrated employment where we work side by side with our non-disabled peers. We're not separate. Marcia is placing people and working with students and companies so that they can go to work in a competitive integrated environment. So again, we're being hired based on the company's needs, not based on any other model that you may have seen or you may have experienced throughout your career as far as being separate. Separate is not equal. So I'd like to look to see if we have any questions right now in the Q&A. I do think that I've seen a couple, so I'll go into the Q&A first. And we have one here. As we work on building our disability ERG and consider neurodivergent employees, we'd love to understand some of the stats verbally shared on page 10 of the webinar around human capital impact. Marcia, that seems a little general to me, but would you like to take that one?
Sure. So, I think what we see is, and ERGs are a really good example. Employee engagement is a big focus of a lot of companies these days. And when companies set up either a disability ERG or more specifically a neurodiversity ERG, they are getting a lot of people to join. And SAP, who is one of the original companies that launched a neurodiversity hiring initiative and has one of the larger programs out there, they did a study and they found that for every 1% increase in employee engagement, they saw a $40 to $50 million positive impact on their revenue. And when we talk to our client companies who don't have a neurodiversity specific ERG, what they do find is that within their disability ERG, a significant number of members are individuals who are either neurodivergent themselves or allies. And it seems to be one of those areas of disability, and we can have this discussion. It's probably another whole discussion, which is it even a disability? I mean, there are so many facets in terms of the ability to think creatively. And if you listen to what Oksana talked about, these are individuals who have had to develop compensatory strategies around either, how they process information, how they communicate, to be able to graduate from college and be successful. So they come with a mindset and a way of thinking that is only helpful in a workplace. And many of our candidates don't think of whatever their diagnosis may be as a disability. That's a tangent. So there are a lot of features in terms of the ability to attract individuals and retain your employees, that neuroinclusion only helps.
Thank you for that very much, Marcia. I do think that one of the challenges that we have as well when we think about those statistics and then bringing that back into the workplace where there are many of us that, are neurodiverse that we don't check the box and self-identify, right, within the workplace. So that significantly brings those statistics down in the workplace, and it makes it more difficult for businesses to understand what does the overall population look like and how do we support that population. So there is a lot to be said for self-identification, and I always make this very important point. Self-ID is checking the box, right? Asking as part of your hiring process, are you a person with a disability? Yes, I have always checked that box. I have not needed to disclose my disability until most recently, within the last 5 years, to ask for accommodations. And it's important to understand because many of us do not want to disclose. We don't want to have that conversation. We may not need we may not need that accommodation at this point in our careers, but it's something to constantly consider whether or not you will benefit from an accommodation at whatever point you are in your career. So really important when we think about those statistics and how can you make a difference in the workplace, it's really helping people, all of us, mental health, neurodivergence, whatever that is, that we are all people with disabilities and we all need to do our part in checking that box. It is anonymous. Your employers do not see that information. So I'm going to get off my my soapbox on that one. But I would love for Melissa or Oksana, this one is for you. There are a few campuses across the US that are designed to specifically support neurodivergent students. How does Beacon prepare students to enter into a workforce that has historically not been designed to support neurodivergent employees to thrive and succeed?
Well, if I maybe just start from the educational standpoint and a little bit of maybe an idea that the idea of neurotypical individuals or average student existing really dates back to the 17th century when we first introduced classroom system. And in that system, we wanted to teach to an average student. And, I remember my education professor told me, you know what, I'm yet to meet that average student to who we're teaching. Mm-hmm. And not wishing to dilute the idea of neurodiversity and make it non-existent. I just wanted to say that we have to be mindful of the fact that we all process differently. We all see this world differently. And we have to really create a pool, just like Marcia said, of universal accommodations, of something that will work almost for everybody. Whether you have ADHD, for example, you may use text to speech when you have dyslexia, when you are tired, or when you have ADHD. It's just a text-to-speech assistive technology because it helps you understand the written material. So what I'm saying is the idea of universal accommodations, and then the idea of accommodations that have to be requested for which you disclose. We have to improve the general experience of our employees, of our students, and then we can help them through requested accommodations, something that they have to request because they have a disability and something that has to be approved and granted separately. So here I wanted to give the floor to Melissa.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And to add to that, the idea and concept that companies everywhere want to embrace, develop, and advance this type of talent across the universal spectrum here. And it is less to do with checking a box that they have hired appropriately for that time period versus developing a talent workforce. And that concept really starts to speak to students when we can introduce that concept at a much younger stage in their education careers. So in that work of choosing to disclose, choosing to identify as they deem what's appropriate for them at any stage they may be in, we've come to learn that early experience and early engagement can help a student make those thoughtful and those thought-minded decisions so they can determine what that pathway can look like. The earlier that we can engage students in all forms of experiential learning, we'll build that stamina, we'll build that practice that they need. That can't just be classroom-based learning. It's got to be that combination of field experience, on-campus experience, community experience even, to be sure that they are equipped with the tools and resources in ever-changing environments so they can become more accustomed to what those nuances look like within college, within education environments, and the workplace as well. We are all serving neurodiverse individuals at every single campus across this nation. We just happen to specialize in it with every single one of the students that we support. But what that means is that we have to acknowledge and recognize that some students are quick to come to the table to ask for that help and to ask for what those resources could be, but so many others aren't there yet. And it is that power of yet, but really engaging them earlier in that experience and exposing them to greater opportunities to take those risks will only help them as they're exploring those new career opportunities as they transition through college and beyond.
Thank you so much, Melissa and Oksana. I appreciate that. I want to get at least one more question in here, and I would love for both, Marcia, for you to answer this, as well as Oksana and Melissa, because it's a great question. I understand the hesitation to disclose with employers. What do students think about applying to hiring programs? And I'm interested in across the board, right? Students and just neurodiverse talent in general. But what did they think about applying to hiring programs that are explicitly for neurodivergent talent?
So when individuals come through us, one of the first things we tell them is, if you are being presented to an employer by us, you are being disclosed. Exactly. That disclosure is limited. It is limited to whoever's involved in the recruiting process and interviewing process. And beyond that, it is the individual's choice as to how broadly or not broadly they want to be disclosed. I will tell you, in 14 years, we've had maybe one or two candidates say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with that, and walk away from the process. Part of what we tell the individuals is, these are companies who have engaged us because they specifically want neurodivergent talent. And they have gone through assessments. They have gone through education and training. They are looking to create an inclusive environment. We will be there with the candidate and the employer through the entire process, and then for at least 6 months afterwards, if it's a full-time hire. So they are getting a lot of support, around the whole process. And we actually now, it's more common for us to see candidates who only want to go to employers who have some kind of neuro-inclusion program. And having done this for 14 years now, I can tell you, just in general, the willingness and the desire to disclose among particularly young people, those first coming out of school and has changed significantly. We've seen a real, it's not gone, but there has been a real lessening in stigma and a sense of, I need to hide this. And we have many candidates who will only go someplace where they feel they can disclose, bring their whole selves to work, and be successful.
I love that, Marcia. Thank you so much. Would you have anything to add, Melissa or Oksana?
Absolutely. As we help students identify that sense of belonging, that they are craving, that they are expecting, and they are really searching for in their next chapters, we know that when they select a college like Beacon, or they are integrating into programs throughout the U.S. where they can have that sense of belonging, we know, though, it's important to help continue to educate them about companies like Integrate and others who are exclusively in this space to help empower them. That empowerment that we're building from a college perspective to a workforce perspective comes because we know our students are keenly aware that far too often in the past, some folks have been hired just to satisfy a DEI initiative that they see right through in some ways, and they do their own research. They are investigating companies. They're doing their own, gathering their own intel, if you will. They are studying the corporate culture of different communities and business and other organizations to see if it is the right fit for them, and where they can be empowered to share who they are, how they best perform, and what, if any, accommodations might help them be better performers in that workplace. I think it's the idea of reducing that stigma from their challenge from their learning environment to a performance environment, and that they know that they will have those resources available should and if they choose to share all their needs and how they will best perform for that particular organization. What they're truly looking for is not to be part of a group who's just hired because it was a universal need, as opposed to those who are doing this authentic work in developing talent in these particular areas that really fuel a neurodiverse and neurotypical talent workforce and all the allies who support them.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. So we are running out of time, and I would love to just bring our last poll up if we could. So I want to ask everyone one more poll that we're putting on the screen right now, and it's the same question. So do you have a better understanding now of what competitive integrated employment is? We'll give you about 30 seconds. Thirty seconds is not that long, but it always feels so long when you're on this and it's so silent. Alex, if we could see the results. Yes, 95%. That is fantastic. For the other 5%, please do go ahead. I did put a really great resource in the chat. You can also reach out to us directly. We'll be happy to give you some more information about that. Also, would really, again, like to thank our speakers today. It really was packed with information. While we did not get to all of the questions, we will do our best. What we do is we take those questions, we send them out to our speakers so that we can have answers to them and provide those the answers to those of you that were on the webinar today. I do want to, again, just say thank you to Beth, and remind everyone that we've got an exciting webinar on November 21st titled What's Next? The Impact of the November Election on Disability Policy. So that will be moderated by our president, who you all met today, Beth. We will have former Congressman Jim Langevin of Rhode Island, as well as Charles Edward Catherine, NOD's Director of Corporate and Government Relations, speaking on that topic. Sure to be very interesting depending on how the election turns out. So the link to register will be in the chat. And again, thank you so much to our panelists, and have a wonderful day. Appreciate the time that you spent with us today. Actually, we have 2 minutes. I'm going to give somebody the opportunity. Is there anything that you would like to add, Oksana, Melissa, Marcia, that we may not have covered that you think is important?
I would say that working with students, working with employees who are neurodivergent shouldn't be scary at all. There is a lot of information, there are a lot of data that can help you accommodate those individuals and make them really, really successful. So it shouldn't come as a stigma on our part that if I employ somebody who is neurodivergent or I work with somebody who is just rocket science. Well, it's not. As long as you're consistent and mindful every step of the way that you're working with people who may process information differently.
Yeah, and I totally second those comments, and would add that if you are an employer thinking about neuro inclusion and making this part of your broader inclusion and hiring efforts, there are a lot of resources out there. There are a lot of partners to work with. Reach out, ask, do your research, learn and talk to people, and then put together your team, and you will be successful if you put the effort into it to lay the groundwork.
Great, thank you. I think that's a great way to end it today. Please, everyone, do take a moment to complete the survey at the end. And thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.